My family told me to stay home. This trip is for the ones who matter. I agreed. But that didn't stop them from charging my card $7,200. I quietly canceled everything, flights, hotel, and froze the card cold. At 6:17 a.m., my phone buzzed. We're stuck. They won't let us on. I just replied. Correct. I don't matter, remember? The next morning they tried to break into my garage. The police came first, and then I. That was my mom's exact phrase when I asked if I should join them on their Hawaii vacation. No hesitation, no sugarcoating. Just a casual dismissal, like I was a piece of background furniture, useful but forgettable. They were planning the trip for months. My parents. My older brother Kyle. His wife Megan. Not their kids, though. The plan was to leave the two boys, 7 and 10, home alone. I didn't know that part at the time. That would come later. When I asked about the kids, my brother laughed. They'll be fine. Just a week. They've got tablets and frozen pizzas. I thought he was joking. I rent my own place a few miles from my parents' house. I moved out because I couldn't take the noise, the entitlement, or the guilt trips. But that didn't stop them from calling me whenever they needed money. And they always needed money. Kyle's job is complicated. His words. He's had 5 different ventures in the last 3 years. None of them made money, but somehow he always had enough to buy new sneakers and gold bracelets for Megan. Meanwhile, my parents racked up microloan debt like they were playing a game. And every time the roof leaked or their phone got cut off or the car insurance lapsed, they called me. And I helped. Not just once or twice. I paid off $5,500 in the last year for bills that weren't mine. Guilt's a powerful drug when you've been raised to think that saying no makes you the bad guy. So when they told me I didn't matter enough to go on the trip, I told myself that was fine. Maybe I needed the break from them. That was 4 days before the flight. Then my card got charged. $7,200. First I thought it was fraud. But no. It was them. They had used my credit card, the one saved on the old family desktop, to pay for their entire Hawaii trip. For plane tickets, hotel, activities, even premium spa bookings and a freaking private luau dinner. They booked it all using my name, my money, and didn't even think to tell me. I didn't blow up. I didn't call or scream or demand anything. I opened the airline website, canceled every reservation. Called the hotel, same thing. Luckily they had used refundable options. I froze the card. Filed the fraud report. They thought they were clever. Thought they could use me one last time. They were wrong. The morning of the flight, my phone buzzed at 6:17 a.m. We're stuck. They won't let us on. Something's wrong with the booking. I stared at it for a minute. Then I typed back. Correct. I don't matter, remember? I didn't get a reply. I figured that was the end of it. Maybe they'd be embarrassed. Maybe they'd reflect. Maybe they'd finally understand I wasn't going to play the fool anymore. I was wrong again. The next morning, around 7:40, I heard scraping outside. I thought it was the trash collectors. But the sound didn't move. It got louder. Metal against metal. Then a loud thud. I checked my security camera feed. There they were. My dad and Kyle. Trying to pry open the side door of my garage. I didn't hesitate. Called the police right away. I told them exactly what was happening. While I was on the line, my phone showed them pulling something out of the trunk. A crowbar. They ran the second the patrol car turned onto my street. The officers were there fast, but not fast enough. My dad and Kyle were gone. No plate number. No footage of their getaway. Just muddy footprints, a dented door, and a few smashed garden tools they probably stepped on trying to sneak around the back. I didn't hear from them that day. Or the day after. But I knew it wasn't over. Not when they still had access to the boys. Not when they thought they could still bend me back into place. This wasn't about a vacation anymore. This was something else entirely. I expected silence after the attempted break-in. Maybe some guilt, or even panic. Instead, I got a message from Megan the next morning like we were mid-argument about pizza toppings. We need to talk. You've really messed things up for all of us. Not a word about the $7,200. Not a word about trying to break into my garage with a crowbar. Just immediate blame, like I was the one who screwed up their week-long Hawaiian escape. I stared at the message for a while, then got in my car. I didn't even know why I was going over there. Part of me wanted to hear what insane version of the story they'd cooked up. Another part was just angry. But mostly, I was thinking about the kids. I hadn't seen or heard anything about them since this whole thing started. I parked across the street from my parents' place. Their beat-up SUV was in the driveway, Kyle's car next to it. No sign of the boys. The yard was trashed with toys, wrappers, and broken plastic buckets, like someone had stopped trying months ago. Kyle opened the door when I knocked. Didn't even flinch. Just stared at me with that smug half-grin he always had when he thought he was about to outsmart someone. "You made a big mistake, man," he said. "Real big." I didn't answer. I walked past him. Mom was on the couch scrolling through her tablet. Dad was sitting there too, not even pretending to act surprised. Megan leaned against the kitchen wall like this was just another Tuesday. I asked one thing. "Where are the kids?" No one answered. Just exchanged glances like they were trying to silently assign blame. I repeated the question. "They're home," Kyle finally muttered. "We left them with everything they need." "By themselves?" "They're fine," Megan snapped. "It's just a few days. We needed a break." I didn't even know what to say to that. I asked if they even had a babysitter check-in. They didn't. Asked if they told the boys they'd be gone for a week. They didn't. I asked if they left emergency contacts. Nope. And then Megan, like it was the most normal thing in the world, said, "We can't breathe with them around. We love them, obviously, but they're just a lot. We're human too." I pulled out my phone and hit record. Didn't say a word. Just let the silence hang. Kyle jumped right into it, complaining how the boys fight, how they always ask for things, how it's like having 2 full-time jobs that never pay. He said they just wanted 1 week to relax, to remember what peace and quiet felt like. Then I asked the question I already knew the answer to. "What did you do with the money I sent every month?" Kyle shrugged. "We paid some bills." "You sure?" I said. "Because I've got receipts for over $7,000 in jewelry. Stuff you bought since January. Necklaces. A $1,200 bracelet. That wasn't for the kids." Megan jumped in again. "We deserve something nice. It's not a crime to want to feel good about yourself." I stopped the recording. I could have yelled. I could have thrown them under the bus right there. But I didn't. I just turned around, walked out the door, and called Child Protective Services. They still didn't think I was serious. Until the next day, when the doorbell rang at their house. 2 CPS agents. 1 police officer. Kyle called me 5 minutes later, screaming into the phone, asking if I'd lost my mind. I didn't pick up. I was already on my way to get the kids. I didn't argue with them that day. I didn't scream, didn't curse, didn't even tell them they disgusted me, even though they did. I walked out of the house, got into my car, and drove straight home. Then I picked up the phone and made 1 call. Child Protective Services. I didn't even feel bad about it. I wasn't acting out of anger. I was acting because 2 boys had been left alone for almost 2 days by people who cared more about massages and beachfront cocktails than whether their kids had someone to cook them dinner or make sure they brushed their teeth. I told CPS everything: the unsupervised minors, the abandonment, the history of financial exploitation, the unstable household, the yelling, the missing food. I even sent them the audio recordings. I thought it might take weeks for them to act. It took less than 1 day. That same evening, CPS agents showed up at Kyle and Megan's door. I wasn't there, but I can guess how that scene went. My brother probably tried to lie his way through it. Megan likely tried to cry. But there's only so much you can say when you've admitted, on record, that you're tired of your own kids and decided to leave them like they were houseplants. The boys were picked up from their house the next morning. CPS had to get into contact with a neighbor who had a spare key because Kyle wasn't even answering his phone. I was already on my way when I got the call. When I walked into that house, my parents' house, the boys were curled up on the couch, half asleep, one of them watching some Minecraft video on mute, the other just staring at the ceiling. Their bags weren't even packed. No food on the table. No lights on. They didn't ask where their parents were. They just looked at me and said, "Can we go with you now?" I didn't ask anything. I packed their things. Clothes, shoes, toothbrushes, chargers. A few small toys. The oldest one handed me his homework folder like he wasn't sure if it even mattered anymore. I brought them home with me that night. It was quiet. Too quiet for two kids that age. But they didn't act out. They didn't cry. They just wanted to be somewhere they wouldn't be forgotten. The younger one asked if he could sleep in the same room as his brother. I said of course. Over the next week, I watched everything unravel. CPS reviewed everything I told them. They pulled school reports. Talked to neighbors. Found that Megan had been reported once before. A teacher had noticed bruises, though it turned out to be from rough play. But the case had been closed without follow-up. This time, it stuck. Kyle and Megan were stripped of custody. Temporary, for now, but with serious conditions. Parenting classes. Weekly check-ins. Full-time employment. A stable home environment. The boys would stay with me until they proved they could provide that. If they ever could. My parents, of course, acted like someone had died. They called me, left voicemails, sent long-winded texts about how families don't betray each other like this. Said I was cruel, vindictive. That Kyle and Megan just made a mistake. That I should have talked to them first. As if I hadn't tried that already. My mom said I ruined Kyle's life. My dad said I'd regret this. I didn't respond. What I did do was cancel every single payment I'd been making on their behalf. No more $4,000 a month to Kyle and Megan. No more utility bills for my parents. No more emergency cash for mysterious car repairs that always ended with them at the casino. Over the past 8 months, I'd sent Kyle over $32,000. CPS found out most of that went to online purchases, jewelry, designer clothes, electronics. Nothing for the kids. The fridge had been mostly empty when CPS walked in. Their shoes had holes in them. But Megan had a $1,200 bracelet, and Kyle had 2 new chains. My parents tried to call again. Said their power might get shut off, their internet disconnected. I let it happen. I didn't care anymore. They had bled me dry, emotionally and financially. And the only ones suffering who didn't deserve it were now sleeping peacefully in the spare bedroom of my apartment. That wasn't revenge. That was peace. But it wouldn't last long. The CPS hearing was short. Kyle and Megan didn't contest the decision, not really. They showed up late, didn't bring a lawyer, and looked like they'd just woken up. Megan wore the same oversized hoodie she was always lounging around in, and Kyle kept glancing at his phone the whole time. No one mentioned the kids until the judge asked them directly why they'd left their sons home alone. Kyle said, "We thought they'd be okay." That was it. No emotion. No regret. I sat behind them in silence. The boys were staying with me for now. The court granted me emergency custody on the spot. Afterward, I took the kids out for dinner, nothing fancy, just burgers and fries. They weren't sad. They weren't scared. They just seemed relieved. Like a weight had been lifted. The oldest told me it was nice to eat without hearing their parents argue. The more time they spent with me, the more I saw it. This wasn't a one-time lapse. Their home life had been broken for a long time. They told me about the fights. The yelling. How their parents would stay in their room for hours with the door locked. How meals were often whatever they could microwave on their own. Sometimes just crackers and slices of cheese. One time, they said, Megan locked herself in the bathroom for half a day and Kyle left to clear his head. The boys spent that whole afternoon outside, hungry and waiting. I wanted to scream. Instead, I filed more paperwork. A week later, CPS came back with a full breakdown of how my money had been spent over the last 8 months. Not only had Kyle used nearly all of it for personal purchases, but over $7,000 had gone specifically to jewelry and accessories for Megan. It wasn't even hidden. The statements were shameless. She had ordered custom bracelets while the boys were walking to school in shoes with torn soles. They had also spent hundreds on dinners for themselves, sushi, wine, deliveries from fancy steakhouses, and almost nothing on groceries for the kids. This wasn't just bad parenting. This was deliberate neglect. I didn't tell the boys everything. They didn't need to know. But they were smart. They could feel the difference. Every day with me, they relaxed more. They smiled. They asked questions. They told jokes. They stopped looking over their shoulders before saying anything. Kyle and Megan stopped calling. Completely. 4 days. Then they showed up. Unannounced. Mid-afternoon on a Saturday. I saw them through the peephole before they knocked. They had nothing with them. No bags. No gifts. No apology. They said they were here to check on the boys. Said they missed them. I told them it wasn't a good time. They got defensive immediately. Kyle said I was turning the kids against them. Megan said I was making them look like monsters. I didn't argue. I didn't even invite them inside. They stayed for 5 minutes, standing on the porch, cycling through guilt, blame, and half-baked excuses. Then they left. Didn't even ask what the boys had been up to, or how school was going. The kids didn't ask about them afterward. They were too busy helping me cook dinner. Too busy watching movies under a blanket on the couch. Too busy being safe. My parents, of course, took Kyle's side. Said I was ripping the family apart. Said Kyle and Megan needed a little space, and I was making things worse. Said I should keep paying the bills, because how else are they going to get back on their feet? I didn't even respond. For the first time in months, I could breathe. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. Not even close. It had been 3 weeks since the boys moved in with me, and everything felt like it was slowly shifting into place. They had a bedtime again. They had lunch packed in the mornings. They argued like normal kids, then made up 5 minutes later. The oldest joined a school chess club. The youngest started drawing again. Kyle and Megan hadn't visited since that awkward porch scene. My parents still left voicemails, but they were down to once every few days, usually some dramatic plea or guilt-laced monologue about family unity. I blocked them all. Then, out of nowhere, Kyle showed up at my apartment again. Alone this time. He looked rough. Like he hadn't slept in days. Hoodie pulled low, hands in his pockets, pacing outside my building. I saw him from the window and debated whether I should even open the door. But I did. He didn't say hi. Just stepped in, stood there like a statue, and then said the words I never expected. "We don't want them back." I froze. He repeated it. Said they'd been thinking a lot. Said Megan was in a dark place, and that he wasn't cut out for this kind of pressure. Said the boys were better off with me. Then he added, "We need time to work on ourselves." It was such a perfect lie, I almost believed it. But then he kept talking. He said they were heading to Florida. Restart. They had sold Megan's car. He hinted at a friend offering them a place to crash. He made it sound like some brave adult decision, cleansing, bold, healthy. That's when I realized what was really happening. They weren't giving up the kids out of guilt. They were running. And not just from responsibility. They were running from debt collectors, too. CPS called me 2 days later. Someone had filed a report anonymously claiming I was coaching the boys to say bad things about their parents. It was clearly retaliation. I invited the agent over. Let them talk to the boys. Showed them the school reports. The artwork. The new routines. She stayed for an hour and then apologized on her way out. She told me it wasn't the first time Kyle and Megan had tried to flip the narrative. What I didn't know yet, what no one had warned me about, was that Kyle had also tried to reopen access to my credit card. He didn't have the numbers anymore. But he had access to a shared password manager from back when I used to help him with online banking. I got a security alert on my phone late one night, an attempt to log into my bank account from an unrecognized location. I changed everything. The next morning, I drove straight to my parents' house. I didn't even knock. They acted surprised to see me, like we were strangers again. Then my mom said something that made my skin crawl. "You're taking this all too seriously. They're tired, Ollie. Let them rest. Let them rest." Like raising your own kids was optional. Like a break meant leaving the country and blowing the last of your money on a plane ticket. I left that house without saying a word. But I took something with me. Proof. I had a flash drive I'd left there during the holidays. Thought I lost it. Found it again while looking through a drawer in my old bedroom. It had every document from the last 2 years, transfers, screenshots, receipts. Everything I'd paid for. Everything Kyle and Megan had abused. And one folder I forgot even existed, voice memos. Recordings from phone calls. One of them caught Megan laughing while telling Kyle to ask me for $2,000 and lie about it being for rent. They were laughing. I didn't need revenge anymore. But I wasn't going to protect them either. It's been exactly 45 days since the boys came to live with me. I know because I've been keeping track on a little whiteboard in the kitchen, half as a joke and half as a way to remind myself that this isn't temporary anymore. The board started as a countdown to their parents' next visit. It hasn't been updated in 11 days. Kyle and Megan have stopped pretending. They came by once after CPS made it clear they had supervised visitation rights. That was 20 minutes of forced smiles, some awkward small talk, and Kyle handing the boys a grocery bag with random junk inside. Used action figures. A half-empty tube of candy. A gas station baseball cap. The older boy just said thank you and set the bag aside. Megan didn't say anything to them. She took a selfie with the dog on the porch and said they were heading to a spa thing on the coast. They left before the boys could ask a single question. Since then? Nothing. Not a single call, not even a text asking how they're doing. Meanwhile, I've been waking up early every morning to make 2 lunchboxes with food they actually like. Pancakes on Sundays. Pizza Friday became a ritual. They help with laundry, clean their own dishes, and call my tiny, cluttered apartment home without hesitation. They're different now. Not louder, just more present. The youngest asked if we could get a pet hamster. I said no. He asked again 2 days later and handed me a napkin drawing of a hamster with the name Steve. He spelled it wrong, but I gave in anyway. Now Steve's cage is in the corner of the boys' room and they talk to him like he's part of the family. Meanwhile, Megan just posted pictures from a boat tour in Miami. A new ring on her finger. Not wedding, just something expensive. Kyle's in one of the photos, shirtless, holding a margarita. I showed none of it to the boys. They don't ask about them anymore. And if they do, it's just quick questions. What's mom's favorite color again? Or, did dad ever like swimming? But last night, the older one woke me up at 2:13 a.m. He just stood in the doorway, silent, until I asked what was wrong. He said, "Can I sleep on the floor in your room?" I didn't ask why. I just nodded. This morning, he told me he'd had a dream that Kyle and Megan came back to take him away, and no one stopped them. I almost told him not to worry. But then I realized I couldn't promise that. Not completely. The legal process is slow. CPS has given me temporary guardianship, but nothing is guaranteed yet. Kyle and Megan haven't shown up for their court-mandated parenting classes. They missed 2 already. If they miss a 3rd, the state moves to terminate rights. Permanently. My parents still don't understand. They think this is all some stunt, that I'm trying to prove something, or make the family look bad. My mom left me a voicemail 3 days ago saying, "I hope you're ready to raise those boys for the rest of your life, because Kyle and Megan are finally taking a breath." They don't even realize how damning that is. I also found out something else I wasn't expecting. When I went to update some school records for the boys, the secretary asked me if I was the one who applied for reduced lunch benefits this year. I said no, because I had already paid in full when they moved in. Turns out, Kyle had submitted fake paperwork a month before the trip. Claimed they were still in his care and forged my signature as an emergency contact. He was still trying to collect support for them after abandoning them. That changed everything. I sent it all to my lawyer. Every document, every screenshot, every message. It won't help me sleep better, but it might finally help draw a line they can't step over again. As for the boys, they've been drawing family trees in class. The older one put my name at the top with a little star next to it. The younger one didn't even write Kyle or Megan's names. He just drew Steve the hamster 3 times. I sat on the edge of the boys' bed last night after they fell asleep, one of those quiet moments where everything's still and the air feels heavier than usual. I didn't plan for any of this. I didn't want to become a parent by default, out of crisis. But I'm here now. And the truth is, I don't want to go back. Not to silence. Not to detachment. Not to pretending like any of them ever cared the way they should have. There's still paperwork ahead. Hearings. Evaluations. Bureaucracy. But I've already made my decision. I'm staying in it. For them. For myself. Because whatever mess brought us here, we're not in it anymore. We're building something better. I still get calls sometimes from my mom. I don't answer. Carl sent a text last week with a photo of a beach and just wrote, "Hope you're well." I didn't respond. I don't need anything from them now. Not money. Not approval. Not forgiveness. I don't even feel anger anymore. Just focus. I thought I'd feel like I lost the family. But really, I just figured out who mine actually is.